The pandemic has dramatically shifted the Canadian workplace. After a year and a half, many employers are taking steps to ease back into the office. That will likely come with changes to workplace policies, job requirements, and even mandatory vaccinations. So for more on your legal rights in the new work environment, we're joined by employment rights lawyer Lior Samfiru. Good morning to you, Lior.
Good morning.
So there are growing calls for mandating vaccines for Canadian healthcare workers. The Prime Minister is considering the same for federal employees. What are the legal ramifications around all of that?
Well, I think that is actually the key, because the role and the ability to impose mandatory vaccines is that of the government. Right now, employers do not have the right, and I know many will find this surprising, but employers do not have the right to impose vaccines, even though we all agree that that's an important way to keep COVID out of our lives. It's the role of the government. An employer that imposes mandatory vaccines, except in extreme situations, could be in breach of privacy rights, of human rights legislation. It's not something that is proper. Despite this, I can tell you that a lot of employers are saying, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway. But there's, of course, legal liability. I think at some point the government may have to intervene, draw the line in the sand and say, if you want to participate in these things, such as in a workplace, you have to get vaccinated. Until then, employers cannot do this on their own.
Yeah, and it's such a gray area, because they can't mandate the vaccinations for their employees, but they could potentially see some action otherwise. We know CNN has recently fired several of its employees for breaking the company's mandatory vaccine policy. Google and Facebook have similar policies. So can private companies make their own rules when it comes to vaccinations?
Well, a lot of the stories we're hearing, like the ones that you've mentioned now, come from the states, different laws. In Canada, as things stand right now, employers cannot impose their own rules, except in situations where there's just no ability to wear masks or no ability to do social distancing. If those things are available, since the government said right now that's enough in the workplace, employers cannot impose their own rights. Employers are doing that, though, but a lot of them will find that that could potentially mean legal action against them. So I certainly advise serious caution in these situations.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about people who have been working from home. Do employers have the right to bring those employees back to the workplace if they've already proven they've been able to do their job successfully at home? And some people have even said they've been more productive at home.
Absolutely. A lot of individuals have been working remotely for the last year and a half almost. They've been doing it well, and they've structured their lives around the ability to work remotely. Despite this, an employer is able to say, now that we're open, now that we're allowed to have employees back in the workplace, we require employees to come back to work. So that's despite the fact, as you said, that there's really no necessarily a reason for this. Employees have been successful remotely. An employer can require employees to go back to the way things were pre-COVID. So for those employees that are assuming and are structured their lives on the basis of working remotely, they really need to check with their employer to determine what are the long-term plans. You may get a bit of a rude awakening when you get a call on the Friday saying, Monday, we need you back in the office. That is actually possible.
Yeah, and it should be interesting, since we are approaching the Delta variant still as a concern, and many students are still opting to work virtually from home when it comes to the new school year. So not all parents can go back to work, so that will be something we're monitoring. Moving on, what are the top 3 rights employees should be aware of as they prepare to return to work?
Well, first of all, you have the right to a safe workplace. Your employer has to ensure that your workplace is safe, that all measures are being taken to ensure that you're safe, that you're protected in the workplace. That's number one. Number 2 is you have the right to maintain your existing terms of employment. Your employer does not have the ability to change your hours, to change your compensation, to change your shifts just because you're coming back to work from COVID. Can't do that. That's a constructive dismissal. And finally, for those people that are not being called back to work, you have the right to a fair and actually substantial severance package. In fact, that severance package could be more substantial because of COVID-19. So those are rights important to remember.
Important rights, important tips. Employment rights lawyer Lior Samfiru, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.